You know, Bob, people write in, email, or call sometime, and they always want to know, what lenses do I get for my camera to give me the best combination? What advice can you give them?
Well, that's whether you have a budget or you don't have a budget. That's going to sort of determine things a little bit there. But there are some general rules. Lenses are a good investment. And by that I mean good lenses are a good investment. We have a whole selection of lenses sitting here by different manufacturers. You're going to have questions like, what lenses should I get if I'm a budding professional and I'm going to shoot weddings? What lenses should I get if I do mainly family stuff and I don't make my living that way? So there's different answers for these questions
They say for sports, what do I get?
Absolutely. There's different answers for all these questions to be asked. But I can tell you that lenses in general are a very good investment. And especially these days, if you go out and get one used that's in good shape, and you own it, you can resell it for what you paid for it and own it for nothing as long as you don't break it.
Now we should say that there's two tiers of lenses. Let's call your name brand lenses, your Canons, your Nikon kind of lens brands, and then there's your off-brand names.
Well, John, I'm going to give you 3 tiers of lenses.
Right. Okay.
That's the third-party manufacturers, that's the big manufacturers, and the big manufacturers' commercial level lenses.
Okay. I wasn't even
going 3.
Now that commercial level lenses, we're talking what, $3,000 a lens?
No, you can get the upper level lenses, and they have their designators from Canon, Nikon, and the big manufacturers. You can start at about $700 level and get yourself into a commercial level lens.
Okay, and generally speaking, the 3 levels of lens would be $100 to $300 for the very low end lenses, $300 to $700.
Well, you can't even classify them by price. Because say we've got a nice little big manufacturer lens over here. It's a generic 50 millimeter lens, plastic barrel. I don't know where it's made, not in the U.S., and it has a tremendous picture. So I highly suggest throwing a little 50 millimeter big name manufacturer's lens in your bag. 50 is that classic size that used to be shipped with all cameras for a good reason. It's the compromised millimeters.
You're going to have to walk closer to your subject, and you might be a little bit more intrusive.
Right.
You're
It's not a zoom, but for $60, you can have a
great catch-all.
Sharp lens.
That's true. Okay, and then what's another lens to go?
Well, one of the super ultra popular ones is the 70-210 zoom. Now, I am going to tell you that a generic 70-210 zoom by a third-party manufacturer is going to be the lowest of the quality levels. And the price is going to reflect that. You get what you pay for. If you get into a big-name manufacturer 70-210 that's not a professional lens, it's going to be somewhere in the $300 range maybe, and the performance is okay. For you to get a zoom lens that's very high quality, that's going to cost a lot of money. So remember, we're also comparing primes and zooms here. Primes are the fixed focal length. Zooms, you're familiar with those. And a lot of people are going to come out and say, well, give me a couple of zooms that sort of overlap. A 28 85 or 28 135 and a 100 300 or 7210, and that should be all that I'll need. But I'm saying you could get those, but in addition, throw in a 50 millimeter fixed or a 35 millimeter fixed, because you want to see what your camera can do. And if you get these zoom lenses that are not the thousands and thousands of dollar type commercial lenses, they're not showing you the best quality picture you can get out of your camera. A prime fixed lens is going to give you the best quality.
So you have your 50 millimeter lens, but the disadvantage is you can't zoom in and out. What is the disadvantage of buying a 70-210 or something low-end zoom lens that seems a catch-all kind of lens?
Well, they sell a lot of these lenses for good reasons. 70-210 is a very popular focal length range, and the price may be about $300-ish for a big name, medium grade zoom in this range.
Now, let me just interrupt. If it says 70-210 and you put it on your average digital camera, unless it's a large chip,
full frame, you have a multiplication factor. So
of how much?
Well, 1.6 is one of the very popular multiplication factors in a lot of the mid-range digital SLRs these days, and so that's going to pump a lens like this way up in focal length. And initially that's very attractive, but as a pro photographer, I'm going to tell you the amount of times that I use this, if you're not a sports shooter, are very, very few. The lens that's going to sit in your bag is the big zoom telephoto lens.
So this is why, like this 55-200 lens right here actually will probably be a 70 to 220 or something.
Right, and that's going to give you the range of portraiture in that 70 to 100 range, and a little bit above that for zoom, and you get a lot more use out of that. On your multiplication factor digital SLRs, really a low zoom, now this is a 1740 high-grade commercial, this I leave on the camera almost all the time.
And now what would that cost right off the bat?
This would cost you, upwards of $1,000.
So whether it's Canon or Nikon, you're probably going to have to spend, And what's another big brand other than Canon and Nikon?
Well, you're looking at also Sigma makes great lenses. Tamron makes. They also have their upper level lenses, which are very good. They have a more generic variety, and then they have their upper class lenses. But those are the third party manufacturers. Had a Sigma that was just like this, an excellent lens.
And if you have a budget lens like a Seikor that's 55 to 210 or something, at what focal length does it have the least amount of aberration? Explain aberration.
Okay, now remember that any zoom lens is going to be the best in its absolute middle of the range, not all the way back or not all the way out, zoomed in. So the highest quality is going to be obtained with the lens in its middle range. You're going to fall off greatly at the two extremes of its zooming capability. Also remember that, contrary to your basic depth of field training, thinking, well, the smaller the f-stop, the f16, and higher than that, I'm going to get sharper and sharper pictures. Not true. The most sharpest, best optical quality is going to be obtained right in the middle of the iris range of the lens, right around f8. So if I wanted to get the best quality out of this lens, I'd zoom it right to the middle, if you had the chance to do that, and shoot at about f8.
And the less expensive lenses actually have more glass in them to get the same thing, which means their f-stop, you can't go down as low. So a lot of times people call me and they say, well, I want to really be able to shoot sports, but it's happening at 6 o'clock when the sun's going down and we're doing...
Sure.
And I basically tell them, well, you have to jump up to a higher range lens because the higher range lens inevitably let you go down to a lower f-stop. Now, what is the f-stop lower range?
Well, the thing is that chromatic distortions and such in lenses, that occurs towards the outer part of the lens, and it's a lot worse there than in the center of the lens. So one of the big benefits of your multiplication factor in these digital SLRs that are not full frame is that you're never using the area towards the edges of the lens. Now, that means that that's a plus. But what's happening on a full frame camera or a 35 that uses all the lenses, you're going to see everything all the way to the edge of that lens, and that lens has to be a very high quality lens for you to get tack sharpness from edge to edge. Now, very high quality lenses do give you that, but you pay for it. And if you want to get a lens that is an f2.8 or below, then you're really going to be paying the big bucks in the commercial range of the big manufacturer name lenses to get that ultra tack sharpness all the way to the edges. But you also have to remember that today, the really good cameras are getting more and more sensitive. In other words, they produce a very low noise image at very high ISOs, 800 and 1600. Each time you bump it up 400, 800, 1600 ISO, you're getting another stop of performance. So instead of paying an extra, $1,000 for a lens that goes down to 1.4, if you bump that camera up to 1600 ASA and can shoot a picture that's low noise, well, then you're getting the same effect as if you had to pay for that super deluxe glass.
I see. So that, everything is a compromise. So people, I know that somebody wrote me about shooting sports and they wanted everything. So basically, I've let them know that the sports photographers out there that get that things may be spending $4,000 to $8,000 on one of these huge kind of lenses.
And more, John. And realize that when you see the people...
Some people rent it, right?
They rent them. You see them line up on the edge of the ball field? Those lenses are rented for the day, most of them. The camera's a little thing hanging off the back of the giant lens.
And, you get what you pay for in that.
Right. So just remember, if you can afford to, invest in a high-quality commercial-grade lens by a big manufacturer, get the good stuff, buy it used in perfect shape, use it for a long time, keep it clean, and keep it out of moisture, store it in a cool and dry place, and you'll sell that lens for very much close to what you paid for it years later.
And it should be added, sometimes what I tell people if they can afford it, having maybe 3 lenses, a wide angle, your 50 fixed, and then your 70 to 210 or whatever it is.
That's a very good basic compliment.
And it's a good compromise because, the emotion that you can get from different lenses. Here we have a couple shots of that we could show you, 2 gals here, taken first with a wide angle lens and then taken at a distance, but zooming in. So we got the wide angle lens first and then taking a distance, zooming in using a 200 millimeter, or zoomed in at 200 millimeter with a lens. And you could see it's the same framing of the 2 people, but as we jump back and forth, look at the background, look at the motion, look at the slight distortion.
Very different effect.
In the wide, and it also gives a sort of pleasing look. Sometimes in people's faces, that wide is real nice. Sometimes it's not flattering and you want it at a distance, and sometimes you want that background to be out of focus. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a 28 millimeter wide angle lens, you're probably not going to get that background out of focus too much, but you can almost be sure if you stand at a distance and zoom in from a distance and the background is far away in distance, you can cut everything out by the people, and I like that look a lot.
Now remember though, if you're not running ultra top quality lenses, don't use it at its fully zoomed in position. that really cuts down on the quality. Get a little bit closer and
80%,
zoom back a little
yeah,
bit. You know,
maybe
back off
80%
the
if you wanna-
extremes there.
If you want to
Yeah.
get picky. I mean, you're a big wide angle fan, and I tend to more of getting at a distance because it's almost like they can't notice you're there if you're way far away in a distance.
Indeed,
So,
but
I know.
well, we can argue on that forever.
We should do
Another section.
a movie review show and fight, all the time.
Yeah.
So the UV filters, protective filters
yes,
that you
UV
put on
filters.
front of these.
Right, absolutely, and that's a really important thing to talk about. I know for all of my career, we would generically just go out and buy a screw-on
That's what I
UV
do.
filter
What's
and
the
put it on the
problem
front of the
with
lens to protect the lens. Now, you'll see a little
I
reflection.
tell people to do that.
Right, you'll see a
Okay.
little reflection on here, and because this lens cap, this filter that's on here, is not a coated variety. You're really going to pay about $60, $70 for a nice double-coated
Which prevents the
filter,
reflection,
and you
which
wouldn't see the
prevent-
reflection
okay.
on there. Now, what the thing is, though, that I've done extensive testing, and I can tell you that unless you get the very top quality ones of these things, you're going to get a little degradation in the quality of your image. It's subtle, but it's there. And if you have a $900 lens, like I'm holding in my hand, and you know there happens to be a $30 filter on here, UV filter, well, it's going to degrade that a little bit. So what I'll do is really pull this filter off here and go ahead and put the lens shade on here, and that also protects you a little bit from touching the lens.
So if you're really picky, leave the UV filter on and then take it off.
If you're really doing a critical shot.
Now, for about 15 years, I've made the mistake in the first 5 years of screwing this puppy on tightly and leaving it on because I'm going to leave it on all the time. It's a bad move because naturally, over the years, some of your photographers have found out this thing will keep screwing itself on tighter. Then you need a special tool to get it off, or you need a...
Do not want to strip those threads either.
So really, when you screw this on, go to the point of it being tight, but let it hang a little because trust me, if you go,
it's not going to come off.
Another month later, or 2 months later, you're going to try to take it off.
It's not going to fall off on you.
And I think we've pretty much covered it. If you can afford it, start with your basic. I would say your 50 first, and then secondly your zoom, and then your wide. Now, if you're more into the wide shots, start with your 50 and your wide. And then when you can afford it, go to your zoom. But if you're more into the zoom shots...
But I would buy, planning on thinking on upgrading, because you paid for a great digital SLR with exchangeable lenses on it, and you really want to see what that camera can do. And when you buy even a $60 50mm fixed prime lens and put it on there, you're going to go, wow,
yeah, really.
that's a lot better
it doesn't
than
have
zoom.
It doesn't have a lot of...
then you're going to start looking at lenses.
Well, and the other thing to remember, too, is, like you say, if you invest... in one of these lenses and you pay $600 or $700 if you can afford it and you take good care of it, you might take a $100, $150 loss or something.
Less.
You know, maybe even less, or especially if you bought it used. So if it's taken good care of, they're a good investment to have. Just don't leave your bag of lenses in the car unlocked.
That's correct.
So I think we've covered it for now. If you have any questions, do email us on this.
Absolutely.
We'll be happy
Glad to help you.
All right, thanks.
Take care.
Good job.